the pressures on men and dads in the workplace and at home is challenging, and it's hard to handle those roles successfully. But whose agreements or measures are we setting those goals across those roles in the first place? What's it like to manage teams across different time zones and still be expected to play the best version of you at home? Today we talk to Brian Ballantyne, General Manager at Amazon, who has a team globally, and therefore the pressures on his time, the expectations and commands on his time from external sources is real, and it's very challenging. Ultimately, we talk a lot about personal responsibility and not giving away your diary and giving away your calendar to those who will just take more, including home and work roles and the environment that brings. So it was a great conversation. We talked about loads about how employers can be more inclusive and in the charge for equality, how managing that team across different time zones happens, how to manage that and where that all begins. There's loads that we talk about. So really exciting chat, this one. I hope you enjoy it. So let's dive in and meet Brian from Amazon. So welcome along. This is the latest episode in the Dads in Business video series, where we speak to business leaders, business owners from across the business spectrum to offer support and advice to fellow dads in business or dads in the workplace to bring the best of themselves to home and to work. And today I'm delighted that we are sharing a conversation with a really inspirational character who's been in my network for quite a while now. And my network is the wholly the better for it. He's a regional manager for training programs based out of Luxembourg, working for Amazon. But also, Brian, you're a dad of two, I think.
Yep, dad of two that I know of.
Yeah, cool. Give yourself a little hello to the crowd. Let us know who you are.
Hi everyone. Thanks Rob and Anga for welcoming me on this chat. So yeah, I'm dad of two kids, 13 and 15. So just getting into that teenage phase and kind of grieving a bit, when they were kind of small and cute. I've been in Luxembourg for quite a few years now. I've worked about 8 years at Amazon. Before that, about 12 years at Vodafone. So always kind of like in these big corporates. And kind of, my wife, she's a lawyer at the European Court, so she earns slightly more than I do, and we kind of both try to balance quite intense jobs with having a family and supporting our kids as well, and having our our support network back in the UK, so not having them close by. So yeah, that's some context for me. I work at Amazon. I guess other things, I'm involved in an initiative called Men for Inclusion, which is a kind of startup commercial enterprise trying to get more men involved in the inclusion conversation. I kind of do a few other things. I've written a book called Confessions of a Working Father, which is a kind of essentially a series of blog posts from a few years ago, just reflecting on, what it is to be, a working dad, because we don't often get to talk about it much. So I was just trying to hold space for other dads to kind of share their experiences. So that's me.
Brilliant. Yeah, the Confessions of a Working Father book, was that in your time in your current position, or was that before you moved to Luxembourg?
It was in a different role at Amazon. Basically, I'd been in I was a diversity and inclusion and equity kind of leader for international technology at Amazon for a couple of years. And there was so much focus on like going to these women in tech conferences. I went to Amsterdam, and it's like 2,000 women in tech. Well, to be honest, mostly recruiters, talking to each other, looking for the women engineers. But you just, and there was the keynote from HP about, the importance of women in tech, and all the women in the room were kind of nodding. And I just thought, they already get it. They already know, like, there's 20 men in the room, and they're like, where are the men? It's like, well, it's women in technology. It's not like you really invited them to come, or you didn't really get into where they were at. You didn't get to the mainstream. So, I just kind of, I was talking to Nadia Nagamutu, and, she'd done research on, groups where women get ahead isn't thanks to all the kind of lean in circles and everything else. It's where, the men are picking up more of their fair share of the childcare and the housework. Mm-hmm. So I just started doing these posts about being a hands-on dad. I'd grown up in a family of 6 kids, kind of 2 merged families where we're all expected to work, to do jobs around the house, and my mum and dad both, equally involved. So just shared some stories, really. So stories of what it was like growing up with my parents, and then how I've experienced it, you know, as a parent, and then balancing all that with work, not just working from home, just also parenting from work, you know, like even when you're at work, you're still on call for your kids. So yeah, that was just kind of some stories I wrote at the time.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? You're always on call for your kids. I remember just last week, my missus had a tummy bug or something, so I had to quickly adapt my whole diary to go and pick up my middle one from school. And yeah, I was cursing at the time, but you're right. You're always on call for your kids, aren't you? Parenting at work. I like that one. It's interesting. And Anga, you, I guess to give a bit of context about that space for men and dads, you know, Brian obviously felt there was a gap and an opportunity to start having that conversation. I guess you do the same with Men Up North, don't you? That's the space that you hold, I guess, which is where we met, right?
Yeah, it is. It's a safe space for men to take off the mask that we wear in society and be real, really, and have a conversation where it's a space that's non-judgmental, and men and dads can share authentically what's going on. I think me speaking personally for myself, like there was a time in the past that I couldn't speak authentically. I couldn't speak about what were my barriers or what was getting me down, because I was the leader of the household. I was leader of the business. I need to be the strong person, the strong man. So the realization, but that I can't be strong all the time, and it's okay to have sides of me that is imperfect in some way. And as it 3.5 years now, it's actually, yeah, the conversations are incredible that emerge from these spaces. I'll throw this back to Brian. You mentioned you're in Luxembourg, and your partner balance both intense jobs, and your support network is back in the UK. So yeah, I'm curious, how has it been like, I guess, during these times, navigating that, being the leaders of the leading the family, and then being a partner and leading at work as well, like, and managing teams in different time zones. Like, how do you manage this, Brian?
Yeah, not very well. I'm pretty exhausted, but yeah, I guess what what has worked well. I mean, recently my wife's mum came over, you know, twice in quick succession. There's been a long period where, you know, now after Brexit, it's harder for people from the UK to come to Luxembourg. Luxembourg had kind of closed its borders to non-EU countries for quite a long time. So we were kind of struggling without, you know, any help. At the same time, you know, my nearly 15-year-old, 14-year-old is refusing to go to school, like wouldn't go to school for like 3 months. Every day was a battle. Every day was like, why aren't you going to school? You know, what's going on? And it was just really tough. And like, you know, at half term, the school was like, we're going to have to call the police because, you know, your child's breaking the law, and like, you know, your child might get taken into care, you know. And as a parent, like, you know, that is just so, like, you know, shocking to think that your child might get taken away from you. And they said, oh, you know, even like, you know, the psychiatrist was involved, said, you know, the law would say that you'd failed as parents, you know, and there's so much shame in that as well. So I just kind of like took drastic measures and got Gabby enrolled in like an online school. So, you know, there's a school called 𝐂𝐓𝐍𝐄𝐄𝐓. It's out of the UK, but they've got about 3,000 students internationally around Europe and the Middle East, especially. I mean, we kind of quickly got Gabby into that, but then, you know, there's a struggle every day, you know, every class, making sure Gabby's awake, is Gabby going, and it was causing a lot of conflict, you know, within our house, with me and my wife, with my wife and Gabby. And so we just needed my mother-in-law, who gets on very well with Gabby, to come over. So she came over, and then we asked her to come over again. So just that, but then she's back in the UK now. So that's really helped and given us a boost, having her to kind of come over, because you know, she gets on well. She's kind of not really a peacemaker, but, you know, she creates like a nicer environment and kind of diffuses a lot of that conflict with her daughter and granddaughter. So
and are you solely working from home, Brian, as well?
God, it's funny thinking about where to work, because the challenge now, you know, I'm in this room right now, but in an hour or so, Gabby's going to use this room for doing online school. So, you know, my wife's gone to work. We're taking it in turns, because it's so stressful to be at home getting Gabby to attend classes. So we're taking it in turns. One's at home and one's not. But the problem for me is that, you know, I went into the office yesterday morning. I don't have like a designated desk. You know, most of my meetings, I was talking to some of my teams in India. I just needed somewhere to do video calls, but there's no, all the kind of the phone booths are kind of like taped up because of COVID. So there's nowhere. I just found a chair in the kitchen in the office, and I just thought, what's the point of this? A few weeks ago, I worked from my car for a day. You know, I couldn't be in the house, so I just thought, where can I work? Like, you know, the office, I couldn't. It's not. So I just kind of worked from my car. Basically, I drove half an hour to charge the phone, took a meeting by quite a nice view by the river in Luxembourg, drove another half an hour to charge up my phone up and heat the car back again, had another meeting, drove somewhere else, and I'm just like, what the hell? And I was kind of thinking, do I need to get a caravan? Do I need to get like, a motorhome, which has got like an office in? Because, we've got a pretty big house, like, there's space, but just the acoustics, we just can't, and the stress, we can't all be in the house at the same time. It doesn't work every day. So yeah, just working from my car. It was actually more comfortable in my car than in the office yesterday, to be honest.
I don't know if that means you've got a really good car, or
you're working you're a senior manager in an international company, and you're just working from your car. It's a bit crap.
It's a strange, and I guess so much of the focus has been, certainly it feels certainly in the UK here, that a lot of the focus is on those that have struggled with work, those that had time off, or those that have unfortunately lost their jobs or their business. I guess obviously you were very busy during this whole period because Amazon as a company thrived, and I don't think they should hide from that. I don't think anyone should be ashamed of their successes, but that must put different pressures on you when you're more busy during this time, and there's the addition of no school or homeschool, whereas everyone else that wasn't at work could focus on that homeschooling side of things. So there must be a real strain on the roles that you had when the pressures and expectations that are put on you from work are probably greater than they've ever been.
Yeah, and I am very lucky, to still have a job and be in a company that's growing. Vodafone, we had redundancies every year, and it was pretty tough. At least Amazon is generally quite successful and growing. And as you say, I think our business grew at least 40% during COVID. Everyone was getting home delivery. So it didn't necessarily trickle down to, we didn't get any pay rise last year, but our CEO went into space. So, it depends where you want to put your money. But so I think that's the tough, the business is growing, and that, while there was some understanding for people in different situations, or, with people going through bereavements or illnesses themselves, there's still that pressure to business. It's quite a mechanical business. We've got to deliver, we've got to increase, we've got to meet demand. So that, that was a lot of stress. And, some managers in Amazon and leaders done a great job in being compassionate, and others probably haven't done as good a job as they could have done. So, I guess that was stressful. And there's still, the annual kind of ranking of employees, and, there's certain kind of percentage being managed out. So there's that kind of anxiety about job security as well, just like in all companies. I'm sure all companies have got the same kind of a thing. This isn't unique to Amazon, but it's stressful. So yeah, we didn't lose the job, but it's been a pretty stressful time. And during that time, I've had, I've been doing spiritual healing. I've had, professional coaching, or, other support that I've, paid for myself. The company hasn't provided, just to be able to manage that time.
I mean, one thing that jumps out at me is that, when you talked about having to work from your car, you'll see I'm sat in basically this is the back half of my garage, but the driver's too narrow for cars, so we can't use the garage. So I thought, right, I'm going to convert the back half of my garage because I need a space.
Is it warm enough? Is it cold in there?
I've got a little electric heater just over there. So it's,
dad tips.
It's wonderful. Yeah. But it's just that physical leaving the house. And even though the house is 6 feet that way, I've got a space. And I've told the kids, they've gone off to school now. Their mum's took them to school, but it was like, right, daddy's off to his office now. And they know, cool, we won't go in there. That's fine until we're invited in, or we know we can go in and have a play. But before that, I was trying to be in work mode, then be in dad mode, then be in home mode, then be in husband mode, all from the same space. And it just didn't work. And it's when Anger introduced me to a thing called transitions. Real important step that I found, even when I was when the same space was home and work, that transition time, whether it be 30 seconds, 30 minutes, whatever it was really important, because I always struggle to shift focus completely from one thing to another. I'm one where work is always somewhere near the front of my mind. Even if I'm playing with my kids, I'll be thinking work won't be far from the front of my mind, as I'm sure it is with everyone. But that transitionary time, super important. Anger, do you want to give us a bit of a headline view about what transitions are?
Yeah, so it's a way to not blur between activities or choices that you make in a day. So how do you transition between home to work? How do you transition from home to work? Even within work, how do you transition from one meeting to another? you know, because if we're not careful, then the charge, inverted comma, that we had from a previous thing, if you had a headache taking the kids to school, for example, Rob, traffic and all these things, that feeling of annoyed, you can, if you're not careful, you can carry that into work, and then that annoyance can be carried in the first meeting that you have in the day. So this is the thought about how do we create that space between one thing to another. So this could be a simple breathing techniques, deep breathing, exhaling longer than you're inhaling, 3 times, 5 times, and then choosing after that, how do I want to be in the next engagement? So there's a different quality of being when you're at home. There's different effectiveness, I guess, at home, and there's different effectiveness at work. And if we're not careful, then we can take those effectiveness and how we want to be as a leader at work into home. We can be direct with our kids, and that's not really, especially teenage kids, and being direct with teenage kids is not really something that's useful. So yeah,
I can relate to that. And I think even before COVID, I'm not a smoker, but I used to have smoking breaks, but I call it like a sunshine break. So between meetings, I just sometimes just go outside for a few minutes as if I was having a cigarette break. And, you know, smoking's not really great for your lungs, but it is good for probably for your mental health, just processing thoughts, you know, and emotions and having that break. But I agree with you, like, at least when we're in the office, you know, and I'm not in kind of like, you know, a dangerous, you know, factory environment, but even in the office, you used to walk between meeting rooms, you kind of process, you'd expected that you wouldn't get just like teleport from one meeting room to the next one. Whereas now, like, you know, this afternoon, I've got like 4 hours of meetings back to back, each one goes straight into the next, and I just have to, and people say, oh yeah, I finished 5 minutes early, finished 10 minutes early. People say, oh, I'm going to give you 2 minutes back. And then, but my habit now is just like I have to be 5 minutes late, you know, just to get a glass of water, or just to, you know, just to kind of, then you're into the next meeting, and you're still bringing the baggage of the last meeting. Meanwhile, you know, one of your kids has come in and asked for something. Meanwhile, your wife's come in. Meanwhile, someone's rung at the door with a package. Meanwhile, you've hung the laundry up, and then you just kind of like, you're frazzled. So yeah, like, you know, I think putting those blocks in, where I do see blocks in my diary, I just block them, like, you know, break, like, you know, as much as I can. But that's the challenge, you know, managing multiple time zones. I'm in Luxembourg, my manager's in Seattle, so like 5 p.m. for me is 8 a.m. for her. Some of the team I manage is in California and New York. So yeah, just kind of, you know, making the most of that overlap of time, so I'm not dragged into my evening as well.
And I guess keeping that energy level up, because your boss is 8 a.m. you're 5 p.m. and you've just had 4 hours of back-to-back meetings, and you or her first meeting. So she might be all sprightly and fresh, and you've just been through the ringer of 4 hours back to back. But I guess you then have the pressure to be up and energized, and as if it's your first meeting of the day as well. It must provide some real challenges that when you take that headset off at the end of the day, you must just want to, I don't know, find some you time, surely.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think, you know, some of the team I manage is in India as well, and they're kind of expected to attend some of the West Coast US meetings. I keep having to like speak for them and say, you know, it's like 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night for these guys. You know, can we change the meeting time? Can we just be considerate or just appreciative that, you know, that people making sacrifices, and these guys have got kids as well, and they've got families, and it's eating into time, or, you know, or work meetings, or, you know, big events are organized, you know, it's Hanukkah last week, or it's organized over Diwali or Dussehra, or other kind of, you know, you wouldn't book a team meeting on Christmas Day. So why, you know, think about other kind of religious, you know, festivals as well. But yeah, I think it's interesting working in an international team, but it does create these stresses, you know, when I'm up early in the morning with the India team, and then, you know, later in the evening with the US team, and I really set boundaries on my time as well. I just started blocking out bigger chunks of time. You know, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to block out maybe more time in the morning or the middle of the day to go for a 2-hour walk or something, or do something else.
Yeah, we did some research. I think it was the back end of 2020. All this whole time is blurring together. I think it was the back end of 2020. We did some research about how COVID has affected the workplace and working dads. And it was, I think it was 3/4 thereabouts of people all feel that they're always on call for work. Now that they're working from home, there's this perception that you're always on, and I can always contact you, and you'll always drop everything. I mean, speaking more broadly about corporate, is that an underlying current that you feel?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I saw that before COVID as well. You know, sometimes I've worked from home, you know, just to be flexible. You'd have someone fixing the boiler, or you'd have to do something with your kids. You just work from home, but everyone think, oh, maybe you're not really working. even though you're probably getting more done. And people in my team, I'd say they could work from home, and then someone else would say, hey, this person's not in the office, where are they? I'd be like, they're working from home, you can message them. Oh, I'll wait till they're back tomorrow. It's like just this idea that, and now with COVID, like rather than commuting, it's like 8 a.m. or 7:30 a.m. you think, oh, I may as well just open my laptop. And then you haven't got the commute home, so you may as well work up until dinner time. And then, and I think, it's boring during COVID. We're all been stuck indoors, and work's something to do. And people kind of, not necessarily workaholics, but, it's something to do when you're just bored and you can't go out your house. And then it just kind of takes over your life. So yeah, I definitely see people working more and expected to respond to things and being online. And there's, yeah, definitely.
I saw something in the news recently. I can't remember which country it was now that did this, but they made it illegal for their boss to communicate with them outside of working hours. I mean, that assumes you have working hours in the first place. but I guess those enforced boundaries, do we need those anymore?
Yeah, I remember that. I think when I worked at Vodafone, with Vodafone Germany, they're just bringing in, this is when we're going from like emails and Blackberries to kind of like instant messenger, and it would show whether you're online or not. And, the German Workers' Councils, as I understand it, felt that was intrusive, like you're showing if someone's at their workstation or at their laptop, never mind thinking about work, talking to them on a phone call, maybe they're writing a document. So yeah, but then, how I think about life is people are going to do their thing, and all you can control is how you respond to it. So, people will say, oh, this manager emails in the middle of the night. Well, don't have your email on, turn your laptop off, take email off your phone, turn the notifications off. People are going to do stupid things. You can't kind of bubble wrap your life so that it's comfortable for you. People are going to do things that annoy you. So all we can do is control our reaction to it as best we can, and, protect ourselves. And if the environment is that bad, find a different team environment that's not as damaging or as toxic. So yeah, that's my advice. Anga, I know you're more in depth in the kind of the psychology of this, but that's how I see it. What we can control is ourselves.
That's really true. Like I used the word reaction there, but like for me, it's about response. Really, reaction is something that straight away there's a stimulus and response. Reaction. Response is when there's a stimulus, bit of a gap, and we can choose a response. This is what I've been hearing in terms of what you've been saying. Is you've been choosing your response on how you navigate the pressures and the different pressures at work. You're saying about this, you made conscious choices to create boundaries, you made conscious choices to create pauses, you made conscious choices to create blocks for you to do what you need for you. And there's an element of like, there's no guilt in the way when you're explaining it or sharing what you're doing, because you work in multiple time zones, and I'm assuming the times bleed to the evenings, if not to the late evenings too, and then sometimes early mornings you have to be on to do calls. So there's something here about, I think it's and this is the pattern that I've heard as well within my coaching clients, the making a choice to book time in their diary for themselves, for rest, for recovery, for a pause, for that walk. Because some of my clients, they do not just 4, like 6 to 8 back-to-back calls. They're leaders of global companies, so they're expected in one way or the other. And the pattern is, yeah, I've done 8 hours of calls. I've not done any of my work at all. I'm gonna, go help family, go help the kids, and then 8, 9 o'clock, I'll be on again, do my own work till 12, 1, 2, and then sleep till 6, and then the pattern starts again.
Yeah,
like,
it's a choice, as you say. And I don't do that. I turn my phone off once everyone's at home, like 7 o'clock-ish. I just turn my phone off. Even social media, can be a drag sometimes. And I think it's that choice, and that, as you say, that expectation. They're expected to do these things. They still have a choice. They still have a choice. I mean, we had a board meeting yesterday for 2 hours, but I deprioritized it because I had to take one of my kids to a psychiatrist appointment. I don't feel guilty about that. And I think people delegate responsibility, to their boss or to their partners or to their kids as to whether they've done enough. Your boss is never going to be satisfied. They're always going to want more. Your wife's always going to want more of your time. Your kids are always going to want more. You need to decide. And I always say, like, I have to keep my own score. I'm like, okay, I've given enough time to work today. I've given enough time tomorrow. I've had enough time for myself. I'm happy with that. And they're always going to want more. But if you start feeling confident that you've given enough, then they'll back off, or they'll realize you've got a boundary there, and they'll stop asking for more. And if they keep asking and you get negative outcomes, then find a different boss.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I love this personal responsibility side of things. And I think if you if you look at your calendar at the beginning of a week and it's wholly blank, you're basically just giving that calendar to work. I work with a lot of smaller businesses in the trades industry, and their calendars are always just blank. So basically, when a customer calls them, i.e., their boss calls them, they'll just fill in space in their work diary, and it'll just get filled with work. It's not until they start to circle and ring fence personal time or family time that they actually start to take control of their time and realize actually it's a more profitable and better way of running their diaries, because they're owning it a little bit. You're right. People will always want more. I mean, on that same piece of research that we did, a bit of a eye-opening one for me was, I think half of dads, this was more sort of corporate focused, half of dads feel that having young kids and being in employment is a detriment to their position, makes them feel weaker, makes them appear weaker. And I guess that comes down to, I don't know, is it this stereotypical role of men in corporate? Is it competitive in corporate, and therefore I can't be seen to have this weakness that is kids, because it's not going to let me climb the ladder, it'll keep me down because I'm not around when this person's around because they don't have kids. I mean, real eye-opening.
It's funny, isn't it? Because there's lots of different things going on there. You know, I remember when I was getting married, and I saw all the other kind of, you know, the executives in the room with their wedding rings. I thought, I feel like I'm joining the club here. I'm kind of, you know, growing up. And then when you have kids, you know, it's not quite that time of, you know, cigars in the corridor, but there is something about like, you kind of, you know, you're an established, you know, and men get this favoritism, and whereas women are obviously immediately penalized, you know, for all these things. And I guess it depends, you know, when I worked at Heinz, I did a year at working at Heinz, there was a leader there who was proud that he didn't even know what his kids had for breakfast. He was bragging about it. And so you have this kind of old school and still present masculinity about, yeah, I'm autonomous, you know, I'm not held back by my wife, my kids, I can give 100% to this, as if you're in the military, as if you kind of, you know, devoting your time and your life to this cause. But I think a lot of men, and more men, you know, not buying into that, and you know, their kids are precious to them, and especially now they've had all this time together in COVID, they're like, I'm not giving all that time back to the office, and I've got such a bond with my kids now. I'm not going to, you know, suddenly say, well, see ya, COVID's over, see you in the holidays. Yeah. So yeah, I definitely think there's and I think, you know, different men and different approaches. I think, you know, I work in an office environment, but, you know, there's someone working at the cargo Lux Center here at the airport. I think his daughter was sick and he wanted to take some time off, and all the other men were like, oh, well, that's your wife's job, isn't it? So, but that's just like, and you know, there's group dynamics, and a group of men aren't going to let their guard down in front of other men. But if it had been one other guy, it's like, oh yeah, I do the same for my daughter as well. So yeah, there's a lot of this toxic masculinity. I don't know if it's toxic masculinity, maybe that's the wrong term, but I think men aren't helping themselves. I think men are sabotaging their own mental health. You know, Ange, you know, I really admire the work you do with Men Up North. And that's what it comes down. This isn't necessarily about, you know, even though I started writing my book to help women get ahead, and I still believe that's important, I think there's men's mental health, and mental health generally is so important. And we need to help men kind of open up and save themselves, really.
Yeah, it's interesting. Ange, what do you make of that? Where there's a group of blokes in a workplace, and one says, I need to leave to pick my daughter up, and they go, oh, isn't that your wife's job? Is that shame? Is that guilt from the other crew because they don't feel comfortable doing that, or is it just stigma? Where are you at?
There's so many layers to this, you know. And I think I like what Brian said, you know, when there's two guys get together, we can be more real, more vulnerable. And then when you get more than two guys together, and then there's a pack of guys. And
it's like the white van or the building site kind of thing.
And then it's interesting. And then, but it depends on the context. If that was on a football field, if that was on a building site, if that was in certain places, if that was in a pub, then there's a certain permission of conversations or the way that men engage with each other. But it's almost kind of like there's a sense of competition. There's a sense of, I guess, camaraderie. We're in this together. There's a sense of, lack of a better word here, taking the piss out of each other. You know, there's this banter, joking around. It's part of how, I guess, guys engage and check each other, test each other out in some way. The essence here is about how do you stay strong within, you know, what we said before, make a choice to go, hey, if the guys are taking the mickey out of me, and how do I stay strong within myself to go, this is my choice. You know, I love my kids. I want to be there for my child. okay, it's fine for you to take the piss out of me, but this is what I'm going. And there's something about actually the permission. Like if it's in a group, what I found is if we're in a group of men and somebody starts and sharing vulnerability, so the level of competition isn't taking the piss. It's like who has the most vulnerable experience, who's got the most effed up experience in some way. The competition of vulnerability that can occur as well. What's coming up for you, Brian?
And I guess, I think men can be quite hierarchical, probably more so than women, and if the leader of that group starts role modeling a certain behavior, that definitely helps. But otherwise, as you say, men will rip into each other. And, I think I was leaving the office one day, this is a few years ago, at like 6 p.m. and some guy's like, oh, half day. And I was like, well, actually, my first call was with China at 6 a.m. So yeah, 12 hours is half 24. So get lost, and kind of walked out. But I was like, why did I, kind of funny response, but why did I let that niggle me? Just like, but then I just did it anyway. I was like, see ya. And I just kept leaving. And I think that guy after a while was like, oh, I appreciate you doing that, because I wish I wanted to give myself permission to leave to see my kids. So it's often the one who's often most vulnerable who will overcompensate.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like playground bullying, isn't it, really?
Yeah. Well, it isn't. And I guess, you mentioned it's hierarchical. Men are hierarchical, but obviously, that's instantly transferable to corporations are hierarchical as well. And I guess that assumes, therefore, it has to come from the top down to potentially give that permission to its workers. And corporates are still dinosaurs, aren't they? Like, they're probably operated and managed by men of a certain age who didn't do that in my day, so you're not doing it in your day. And I was chatting to John Adams on another video, and it was almost this clash, isn't there? There's the traditional top approach, but then there's what the younger workforce are going to expect, and something's got to give, because employees are going to want that, and employers are going to say no because we never did that in our day. And something has to give somewhere. And I guess it's people like you in the Men for Inclusion, and I'm sure there's countless other groups and people trying to push for this more equal workforce and more diverse workforce. That, what do you think's missing in that case to create that space and that permission for people to be more true to themselves?
Yeah, I think a lot of people wait for permission. I don't think you need to wait for that. I think you need to give yourself permission. And I think, I was on a flexible working event recently. It's talking about giving employees permission. It's like that's too low a bar, permission. Like, you've got to give encouragement. You really got to say, this is, you're not just. But a lot of people, I manage a team which is predominantly women, always asking for permission. Is it okay if I do that? Is it okay? Can I have your permission? It's like what do you? You don't need my permission. Just do it. What's holding you back? And I think this idea of leading from the middle, from me with a position like middle management, not particularly senior in the company, but still trying to role model from the middle. And, it's concerning, especially after COVID, when we've all proved that working from home can work. And yet, companies, including my own, still have this mindset, but the best work is done in the office. With no real evidence to show that, and no data to back it up, but just this kind of mindset, we need to be back in the office. That's where the real work happens. And even during COVID, a lot of companies have forced people to come into the office, because whether it's a command and control, or it's, that's how we did it, that's how I worked, so that's how you're going to work. Yeah, but then you got Generation Z coming in, and even people my age, I don't even know what my generation is, X. Even people in their early 40s like me, just I don't buy into that. And and people are going to vote with their feet, aren't they? And just not join companies or that have those old-fashioned ways and move to companies. And I'm seeing more companies who are doing a better job of being flexible, offering better, support to not just mums but dads as well, and all, variety of employee and inclusive culture, psychologically safe culture, where we can be virtual, flexible, without that shame and guilt. Sign me up.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier about you sort of said it in passing that women get penalized when they have kids. When I first had he's 7.5 now, so about 7.5 years ago. It was in my previous employment before I worked for myself, and I had 2 weeks off, and it was like I was returning to work and I'd been on holiday. So I feel that needs to change as well to some degree. Obviously, working for myself, I don't see that so much anymore because I'm not in employment. I can go and just take my kids to school if I want to. But how's that playing out? And what gaps do you think there are? And what can employers do to try and encourage more balance in that respect for new parents or even parents like yourself who've got older kids?
Yeah, no, yeah, I remember I think I had 2 days off, when my kids were born, because I was still pretty new at Vodafone at the time. And yeah, my wife, lost a lot of blood, so she was in the hospital for about a week. So I was sleeping at the hospital, then coming to work and going back to the hospital, sleeping at the hospital. I was like, this is stupid. And I think in Luxembourg it is good. I mean, dads can get 6 months full time. As you say, if dads do take leave, there is kind of shaming, and you hear people talking about, he's taken his maternity leave, and it's kind of feminizing to do it. Well, they just don't appreciate it. It's hard work, and it's a stress on your relationship and on you're not sleeping, and sleep deprivation is a form of torture. It's really tough. It's in a really tough time. And in my team, I've had 3 people. 2 are currently on extended maternity leave. And I think it's good there are policies now for maternity leave and paternity leave. The challenge I'm having as a manager is there aren't really policies for backup. I've been struggling for 2 months to kind of get an offer to someone to kind of cover the role. I had to get someone to join my team on secondment. It's such a stress. I fully support parents in my team taking leave. And I say to them, you're not the first woman to have a baby. This isn't a new thing for humans. This has been happening for for millions of years. But we still haven't figured it out. We still haven't figured out how someone can take a leave, especially in an American company, where I think in the US, mums are like, all right, it's called temporary disability. And so, then it's back to work as soon as you can. Just that mindset, this isn't bonding time with your child. And clearly, the dad isn't physically disabled. So, why does he need any time off? But, I don't know.
Wow.
So I think that puts a lot of stress on things. And I think, there's also this focus on when the baby's born, and right, the baby's born, right, back to work. But, having teenagers, having a 15-year-old who won't go to school every day and who's physically fighting my wife, it's like having that toddler. It's like, that thing, the days are long and the years are short, but those days really are long. You get to the end of the day and you're just exhausted. It's just been a battle. And then you can't wait for the weekend because you have 2 days where you don't have to get them to go to school, or you don't or they're not coming home and you can't find them. You don't know where they are, or they come home and they're drunk, or they come home, they've got cigarettes, they've got vodka. I don't know. I don't know. I think it's very stressful being a parent of teenagers. And
is there any support for that sort of phase of life? Because I was chatting to John Adams. He's got older kids, and he says there's huge gaps of support and I guess understanding, empathy, whatever you want to call it, for those who have got older kids. He says so much of stuff is focused around early life, but there's a gap. And do you see that gap as well?
Totally agree. Yeah, I think there's a gap there. There's a gap for people, caring for elderly parents. There's people caring for, if their kids have got autism or different, support needs. There's big gaps. It's like, okay, it's just about that, maternity leave when the baby's born, right? Back to it. Yeah. But you see more support, more companies are doing, not so much for men, but for this menopause support, for example. So there is thought about, the different stages of life people are going through. And so, if in that kind of direction, hopefully there'll be more support, for those other areas, for supporting teenagers, and it's all unique situations. It's incredibly stressful. And it happens a lot. It's not like, oh wow, all teenagers, they're trying to figure things out. Hormones are everywhere. My 15-year-old's also transgender. It's a real melting pot. And people will email you links. Oh, here's some resources. Here's some websites you can help, and here's some groups. But it's not always that helpful. And that's not always the kind of help you need. You just want to be able to kind of talk about it, or you want someone maybe who's been through it before who you can share it with, or you just want some time for yourself. But it's not really. My manager is, very understanding at work, and appreciates, the situation, and appreciates having to deprioritize certain meetings, but and says you take a bit of time off, but this is going to go on for a few years, and you kind of think, can I survive this? Because it's so stressful.
And
out of the potential support, what is it that you would value the most? Kind of supporting, being the leader of having a teenager. If you had to choose, kind of all the different support.
Yeah, I don't even know. I think I worry about my job security. You know, I've said to my manager, like, I'm not doing my best work at the moment. You know, the amount of time I'm giving it, my stress, you know, just kind of so stressed a lot of days. I can't snapping at people, you know, at work. You talked about kind of you going from a meeting to, you know, I go from being super stressed at home, breaking up a physical fight between my wife and my child, and then you then got to go into a meeting with people in your team. My tolerance for people giving you crap in meetings is really low at the moment. Like some of my team, I'm just being really snappy with them. I'm just like, cut that out, shut up, and I don't know, stop doing that, because you just haven't got, you're like a mobile phone with like 5% battery. Like you've only got a small amount you can give. I don't know, just that, you know, and I think, you know, I have had that reassurance, you know, that I'm not, you know, you start to think, I'm going to get jobs, I'm going to get fired. And I kind of start thinking about, do I want to work part-time? But then, you know, this is a trap a lot of women fall into. You get paid part-time, but you're still expected to work full-time. You're taken off the promotion track. And I manage a team of 10. I'm like, would I think about my team 80%? Would I care about them 80%? No, I'd still think about them. I'd still lose sleep over them, but you'd be paying me less. Like, you know, this isn't an industrial age anymore. This is about hearts and minds. And so, you know, I don't think I could work part-time, or, you know, you could say, no, but attending meetings is only a part of the job. As you said, Rob, you're thinking about it, you know, at night, think about it at the weekend. But you're not, you know, this isn't just about time that you're on your computer. We're not factory machines anymore. So I think some of that recognition that, you know, we are doing a kind of more holistic job, especially like, you know, in COVID, managers have been called on to be really compassionate. Is that gonna sustain as a skill? It's something I feel I'm good at, caring for my team. We've all gone through all sorts of, you know, challenges. Anyway, so I don't know what support.
Yeah, and you can't just care for your team 9 to 5, can you? You care for your team round the clock. And like you say, if you were to restrict your income because of that time on the job is less, you're still not off the tools, are you? Because you care, because you're a leader of a team. And that's I
don't know.
I'll just keep an eye on time, but I mean, Inga, what are you when you're talking to your sort of clients and companies and organizations, what are they doing, or what gaps do they see, do you think? What are the commonalities from what Brian's saying?
It resonates. The patterns are there. Brian's are speaking it out. But it links back to, going back to, I think, what we talked about earlier about choices, really. You know, like, we are under lots and lots of external stress, external responsibilities, and I guess it's arrows that are shot against us, and we need to pull it out. And some of the arrows come from backwards. So there's an element here of more and more, I think, as men, it's like, how do we look after ourselves? What is self-care? Because and also in terms of, like, what is it that we need for us to be better in the different roles that we play, and actually not feel shame or guilt to ask for that time. Because, like, the pattern here is like, yeah, you need to be on call. You're expected. You have stresses at home. You're breaking up fights between your wife and your daughter, and then going to a meeting straight away. So your capacity of tolerance is low. So there's more and more, as managers, is thinking about what our own well-being as a leader. What do we need to decompress the stress? What do we need to take out the stress in a healthy way, which then creates more capacity for us to handle the stresses from the external. There's a sense of expectation to keep handling the stress, and we've got an unlimited, I guess, bucket of stress in our mind to navigate the external stresses without ever snapping or slipping into. We're all human beings at the end of the day. You know, there's only so much we can handle if you're not careful. So it's really being aware to make the choices to pause, really being aware to make the choices to have a break, really make the aware to have the choices to go, and I need to pause, actually, this is for me, and ask for help. I guess there's a common theme that I've heard. Asking for help is hard for a leader. How is that? How does that resonate with you, Brian?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, for men especially, but also for, you know, a lot of women as well, just asking for help is not something you want to do. I think I got to quite like a low point a few months ago where I just felt like I had no hope about it. You know, even just like, you go to sleep and like, I'm not particularly religious, but just praying, like, you know, give me some kind of sense of hope in this situation. And the next day, whenever someone asked me like how I was, I'd tell them, I'd be like, pretty bad actually, but thanks for asking. And then someone else would ask, and I'd share it with them. And actually I just kind of thought, oh, great, like, my prayers are answered. These people have been sent to come and help me out. So I just started being open. When people said, how are you? I'd tell them, I was like, it's not great. And when people ask me how I am now, like, this is some of the challenges I'm going through. So that's, like you asked, I'm going to say, like, seeing as you ask, it's not great. And then, just being able to talk it through with people, like, they want to give you some help, like, and sometimes it's just like, being able to talk it through with you for 5-10 minutes, that's actually helped me feel that I'm not going crazy. Because sometimes you think, am I imagining this? Like, or, should I, have I got this in perspective? And people will tell you that sounds really tough. And it's nice just to feel validated that you're not making it up, and that someone there does actually care about you.
I think it's probably a good place to start around it. I think that personal responsibility thing, and it starts with us, and we have to be okay to say that we're not okay. I guess it's a common phrase, isn't it? It's okay not to be okay. But I think sometimes we do brush it under the carpet, and we keep brushing it under the carpet because we are seeing that there as a weakness. I can't say that because that'll bother them. I can't say that, it'll make me feel awkward. I can't say that, it'll make me feel weak. And I think they're all blockers that we put in our own way. When in reality, I'm sure that if you do say, actually not that great, people will pull you to one side and say, how can I help?
Yeah.
Not man up. I think that's almost a dying phrase, I think.
Yeah. I think for me, I got to the stage where I just, I had nothing left, and any support anyone can give me, I was open for. So I guess it's not letting it get to that stage if you can. And you just talking things through, whether it's, with a friend or with someone else, or just sharing it. And I think, talking about strength, we've got this quite old-fashioned view of strength. The masculinity view of strength is like a rock. You're this rock that's going to weather the storm. But then there's a feminine view of strength, which is more like water. And ultimately the water is going to demolish the rock. Like, so you can be flexible, you can, hot, cold, you can, I try and tap into more of that kind of water as strength rather than the rock, or have a balance of both. So, it's, I think even when you're vulnerable, I think that is immensely strong.
Yeah.
So I think just reframing how we think about strength can help.
And that's really important, I guess, just to highlight and underline that. It's just, I guess, as we're moving more and more towards, I think, defining what does gender mean, what is the role of a man, what is the role of a woman, these kind of qualities, and being aware of actually making a choice. What qualities do I want to embody? What's important for me? How do I want to express what's real for me? And what you're saying there, Brian, in terms of actually being real and sharing, actually, I'm not that great. And what I found as well with my clients is actually creating a listening partner. So this is a tool that's super useful. We've got people that we talk with, people that can potentially support us. When we share an issue or something that is, inverted comma, bad, there's an element of wanting to help from the other person. But sometimes what we need when we're sharing is not any advice, is not any suggestion, it's just to listen. Yeah. So there's an opportunity to create a contract, an agreement to go, hey, Brian, have you got 10 minutes? Yes, I would like you to just simply listen. I don't need to give me advice or tell me what to do, simply listen. And if you have a perspective or a similar experience, feel free to share. If you don't, it's fine.
Totally.
So that contract it's super useful. And my clients have utilized this tool where actually the pressures in the day, they've got somebody that made a contract with agreement already, then they can just text this person. They go, hey, at 5 o'clock, have you got some 5 minutes? And then also that's a request. And they can say, actually, I don't have my 5 minutes today. Can we do it tomorrow? So it's almost like so the other person can say no too, to push back. So this is super useful because you can have a listening partner where you can help listen to each other and know that there's a safe space for you to share where there is no judgment. They're not going to give you advice. They're going to tell you what to do. And that's it. The simple act of witnessing is enough. And that's what we need as a human being. But is it a problem half? Problem shared is a problem halved? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great approach.
Yeah, my mom used to tell me that loads. A problem shared is a problem halved. There you go. She's made it into the video. Listen, guys, it's just ticked past the hour, and I'm sure Brian's got meetings in his diary.
I've already got, underneath this screen, I've got all these messages popping up.
I'm
just ignoring it, but I'm going to have a break before I look at them.
Of your time. Brian, thank you so much for sharing and joining us on this little chat.
Anytime.
Really interesting just to have a conversation about how you manage your time, what you think's missing in the workplace, and really appreciate you sharing it with us so openly. So thank you very much, and we'll this will be posted out. I'll share it with you as well. But if we could just get a quick little happy wicked, and I'll get that posted out. That's where your colleague.
Where can people find you, Brian?
Hiding in my car.
Somewhere on the Luxembourg River.
LinkedIn's probably the easiest. I started using Instagram a bit, just finding joy in the small things and putting stupid photos. I'm from 𝐂𝐻𝐶 on Instagram, but otherwise LinkedIn's probably the easiest. And Facebook's more for like family and friends. But feel free to say hi.
Fantastic, good stuff. Thank you very much, Brian.
Cheers, guys.
Brian.
Thanks.